I'm Azusa, and I had a shotgun wedding with my husband Yasuo. My parents, who were very much against it at first, are worried about my growing belly and have recently started to bring me meals from time to time, and our relationship is good. I have not met Josie's parents yet, but I plan to visit them when the baby is born. Around this time, my baby sometimes kicks my stomach, and I am gradually getting the feeling that I am going to be a mother. Jose, on the other hand, is not content with his hobby of collecting figures, which he arranges all over his room, even though the children's luggage is about to increase. It is troubling that he has no sense of fatherhood at all. I've been expressing to Jose that I want him to participate in the mom and dad class because I hope for him to be present at the birth, but he always uses work as an excuse for not attending. In the meantime, I was in the last month of pregnancy. One day, while I was preparing pajamas and belly band to take to the hospital so that I could be hospitalized at any time, Jose came to me. "Where's my travel bag?" I took his bag out of the closet and gave to Jose. Tomorrow, a friend of mine was going to a wedding in New York and Jose had been invited. "We're going to New York for a night or two. Do you really need that much luggage?" "We're going all the way to New York, so we decided to rent motorcycles and tour around New York while we're at it." "Huh, but we don't know when the baby will be born, do we?" I couldn't believe my ears for a moment when Jose said that. "We're going on a trip without me. We can't go out that much after the baby is born, can you? So why not this time? My mother and my family will be there for you if you need them." I reluctantly had to agree because I was told that the hotel had already been booked with friends. "I bet you'll be there for the birth, won't you? You should be back by the due date, right?" "I know." The next day, Joe took his bag and left. He never came back to this house again. Being a first-time mother and with the due date passed, I still hadn't experienced any labor pains. Eventually, it was decided that I should be admitted to the hospital for monitoring. I called Jose, but he never responded. In the end, I gave birth without Jose's presence. My frustration with Jose, who was like a shotgun, never returned after leaving the hospital, only increased. After being discharged from the hospital and deciding to stay at home, I decided to call Josie's family. When I told my in-laws that I was going to greet them when I found out I was pregnant, they brushed me off and said sooner or later, and I had never met them. I nervously called them, and a man answered the phone. "Oh, hello. This is Lean. Nice to meet you. I'm here to report the birth of our child." "Oh, so..." I was shocked at the unresponsive voice, even though my grandson had just been born. I asked, "I can't reach Jose. Do you know where he is?" Then the unbelievable words came from the other end of the phone. "My son died in an accident." I could not believe my ears. "He passed away." "Jose, isn't that a lie?" "He died in a motorcycle accident while on vacation." Words that further compounded the blow to me as I struggled to accept the reality. Forget about Jose and live a new life. "What do you mean? I just had a baby. We don't even know if he's really your son." "What are you talking about? If it's not someone else's child, then you probably created a fait accompli and married our son. Were you after our assets? That's terrible." Facing my father-in-law, who was hurling one harsh word after another, despite it being our first conversation, I struggled to hold back tears. I had a funeral to prepare for, and I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now. I'm like, wait a minute, when is the funeral? Please let me see Josie one last time. +3, you don't need to come all the way here. I'll transfer the child support. Forget about Jose. After saying this, my father-in-law unilaterally hung up the phone. A few weeks passed, and I received a call on my cell phone. I looked, and to my surprise, it was Josie's number. What? Hello? Jose? It's me, Josie's father, Redding, who identified himself as my father-in-law, sounded different from the voice of the father-in-law with whom I had spoken the other day. He said, I need to pick up some of Jose's belongings. Can you send them to my house? I had already moved out of my apartment and moved into my parents' house. It's painful to remember, so when I left the room, I disposed of them together. My father-in-law clearly upset. I heard he had a lot of figurines. I got rid of all those too. What? You're kidding. What are you doing? It's weird after all. My father-in-law's voice sounded somehow strange. What? Who are you? I'm Josie's father. What, do you have a problem with me? He said so, but there was a panicked noise on the other end of the phone. I'm sorry. My husband has been very busy lately and seems to be confused. It was my mother-in-law who took over for me. She said, but disposing of Josie's belongings without even informing me. I wish you had said something beforehand. It's not about lacking common sense. It's about understanding manners. Or upbringing, I suppose. It was my parents-in-law who told me not to get involved with them anymore. But it was a selfish thing to say. My mother-in-law, who had suddenly taken over, continued talking in a sarcastic. She continued in a sarcastic tone. As you probably heard from Jose, there is a difference in class between my family and yours. My husband is an executive at a big company, and I am a flower arrangement teacher. I'm in a different world from my parents, who work in the fields like Lean's parents. It would be embarrassing for me to find out that my unborn child is Jose's, so I would appreciate it if you would stop being involved with me. I'll wire you some money and we'll call it a day. I couldn't help but think it was crazy. In fact, since that day when I heard that Jose had passed away, I had been researching with my parents to check the situation. Then, to my surprise, we found out that Jose was still alive. It was all a lie. Up in power, I was just along for the ride with the whole in-laws family's theatric. As I burst out laughing, my mother-in-law continues quizzically. Hello, Lean. It wasn't Jose's father who called, it was Jose. Wasn't it? I know all about it. Come on out of there. Jose is dead. What are you talking about? I already know everything. He passed away, so you want me to leave you so badly that you lie to me. My mother-in-law couldn't say anything more. I understand. I will be there this Sunday with the divorce papers, so please let me just say hello to Josie one last time. At first, she seemed surprised when I found out that Jose was alive, but upon the condition of getting a divorce, she somehow convinced me to agree to visit their house. On the day of the divorce, I visited Josie's parents' house with my parents. Kristen's large, two-story traditional-style house stood out from the rest of the neighborhood. Welcome. You didn't have to come all the way to my house. You could have just mailed it to me. What's the matter? Are your parents with you? Surprised but accommodating, my mother-in-law led us to the room. Is she teaching flower arrangement here? There were flowers arranged in a vase in the alcove. She said, Did you arrange these flowers? They are lovely. She said, Oh, you know a little bit about flowers, don't you? I thought being a farmer, the only thing you see are vegetables. My mother-in-law offered me a cup of tea with a sarcastic tone. There, my father-in-law, along with Jose, both looking ashamed, stood before us. You're still alive. What's going on? Explain it to me. Jose, who had remained silent, unable to make eye contact with me, was replaced by my father-in-law. He was not prepared to be a father. Well, that's how men are. Please forgive him. I'm sorry. I still wanted to have fun. I can't have kids. Please leave me. Such an excuse acceptable when he left his wife in the last month of her pregnancy and ran away. Well, now that it's come to this, you don't have a choice. Have you written the divorce papers? This toxic parent-child duo, putting on such a performance, showed no remorse whatsoever. I can't believe it. I don't want someone with no sense of ethics like that in my life. Here you go. Say, as if he had been waiting for me, begins to sign the divorce papers. I was so stunned that I couldn't even say anything, but my father started talking over a cup of tea. He said, "Oh no, working in the fields is fun. Working in the soil is good, father-in-law. Working in the fields. Could you not do it with me? My husband is an executive of a prestigious company. He wouldn't get my hands dirty like that." My father continued, showing no concern for the words of my mother-in-law, who completely disrespected my family. I remember President Burt saying he recently started a vegetable garden. President Burt, how do you know the president of our company? Yesterday, too. We played golf together. She was happy to hear that her daughter will be getting engaged soon. In an instant, my father-in-law turned pale. It's a pretty big house, but it looks like you have a lot of mortgage left. How did you know? My father did not answer the question, but his calm expression changed, and he glared at Jose. "I know all about it," he said. "Apologize to Lean first." Jose looks down, not saying anything. "After all this, you still can't tell us the truth." My father then began to expose this farce in front of everyone. Jose was cheating me while we were dating, and I ended up marrying me because I got pregnant. However, he had hidden the fact that he was married from the other woman, and they had continued their relationship. Recently, he found out that the woman was pregnant. What's more, it turns out to be the daughter of the president of his father-in-law's company. When he was pressured by the woman to marry her, Jose was driven into a corner and consulted his father. When I consulted his father, he was told to leave it to me. The story of his death in an accident was all a cover story devised by his father, who had been consulted by Jose. My father-in-law probably chose his boss's daughter over me because he was afraid he would be fired from the company. He said, "Please don't tell the boss about this. I still have the mortgage on this house. I can't quit yet." While we were listening to his self-serving excuses, with dismay, my father-in-law's cell phone began to ring. As soon as he saw the incoming call, he suddenly stood up. "President, hello?" "Oh no, yes, I'm here. I understand." After hanging up the phone, my father-in-law slumped in stunned silence, clearly at a loss. "What's wrong with you? What did the boss say?" He said to write my resignation and bring it in tomorrow. My life is over. My father-in-law asked my father weakly as he slumped on the table, "What kind of tricks did you pull off?" My father-in-law was not convinced that my father, who was unemployed, could influence the president of a leading company. My father is a major shareholder in the company where your father-in-law works. What? My company? My in-laws, who knew nothing about my family, looked completely bewildered, as if they had been taken for a ride. My father owned several companies, although he is retired now. He made various investments, and his father-in-law's company was one of his investments. Working in the fields was a hobby that he enjoyed while making investments. My parents' bank manager would routinely come to my parents' house to ask for a visit, so I knew immediately about Jose's in-laws' loan. I just muttered to President Burt, I don't trust a company that has an employee who has a son who would leave his wife in her last month and run away. That's the president. He knows what I'm talking about. The president of his father-in-law's company must have thought it would be difficult if his shares were sold. In the midst of all this, Jose learned of the situation and asked, "What should I do?" He was giving his mother-in-law a hard time. Even though it's a mess of their own making, they can't seem to clean it up themselves. But I'm sorry to hear that, Jose. When I heard you were going to have a baby, I bought a condo in Chicago that looked like a good place to raise a child. My mother-in-law did not miss it. I originally thought that the daughter of the president was too highbrow to associate with. Now that you've had a baby, you can have another go with Lean, right? Jose, my mother-in-law always thought that my family was lower status than her own. As soon as they heard my father's story, they immediately changed their tune and started asking me to continue our married life together. She said, "Lean, forgive me. I'm really sorry I only did what my father told me to do. Let's start," he said, "and my figure that you said you got rid of, you actually moved it to that Chicago apartment, didn't you?" I no longer felt any emotion toward Jose, who was only apologetic and still thinking only of himself. I thought from the bottom of my heart that I did not want such a person to call himself the father of my child. What? Are you still talking about that toy? I told you I threw it away. Besides, you and the Chicago apartment have nothing to do with each other. Jose seemed more shocked by the loss of his precious collection than by my breakup. I felt so ashamed of myself for having loved such a man even for a moment. Then my mother, who had been silent all this time, opened her mouth. She said, "Your mother has a diploma in flower arrangement, doesn't she?" Yes. Well, I have several students. I'm sure that's a story your wife can't even fathom. The mother-in-law looked satisfied as she held up a flower arrangement that she had probably made herself. Actually, I'm from the same school of flower arrangements. Hearing this, my mother-in-law looked a little surprised, but continued in her usual forceful tone. "Oh, really? You are also a flower arrangement master, but there are various ranks in flower arrangement, you know. Is it a local club or something? Last week, you attended a flower arrangement workshop, didn't you?" "Actually, that was taught by one of my disciples." "What?" "Lean told me you were learning flower arrangement, so I thought maybe you knew someone there. I asked my disciples about you. I was so surprised. I can't believe you are my teacher's teacher. My mother is an instructor of flower arrangement." With my mother's one voice, it will be difficult for my mother-in-law to take on students in the future. I hope you will devote yourself more and more to your studies. At the mother-in-law, who had been so confident, suddenly changed her attitude and apologized. "I am truly sorry. I beg you, please reconsider, Jose." Ignoring the sobbing mother-in-law, I took the divorce papers on the table and left the house with my parents. After that, Jose was charged a hefty amount of alimony for hurting the president's daughter. He said he was reluctant to pay because he had no savings, but there was no way he could win against the talented lawyer hired by the company. So he worked day and night, holding several part-time jobs. He won't be able to do his favorite, figure collecting, for a while. My father-in-law, who was forced to retire from his company, could not pay his bills with his severance pay alone and had to give up his house due to loan approval. As for my mother-in-law, it seems that all the flower students she had been learning from have. Currently, I am struggling to raise my children with the help of my parents in their vacation home in Los Angeles. Recently, my hobby of baking bread, which I began as a distraction, have grown and I have started selling bread only on weekends. The organic bread, using vegetables and other ingredients produced by my father, has become popular not only among tourists but also among locals, and sales have been brisk. As for the apartment in Chicago, my parents use it when they go shopping or invite friends over for home parties. I am looking forward to living a fulfilling life and enjoying the future with my children.